Welcome to episode 3 of the final countdown. I don't know if we can sing it, can we? One of the most crazy solos ever, by the way, that song, innit?
So
like
good,
the,
man.
The guitar solo is
my
ridiculous.
mic peaked there.
Yes,
I never took that
welcome.
into account, doing levels.
Well, as long as it's not peaking. Mine's totally did as well. It's fine. That's what yous are used to from us. Honesty and professionalism. And professionalism is... And that is what I want. I've got another vinyl countdown today. I'm on remotely broadcasting from Paisley with the dudes, the guys, Ali and Craig. We're gonna do another one from you from the home because it's been a while, and certainly for myself and Craig, I think our vinyl collection has increased significantly since lockdown. We've bought a fair few things, especially Craig. He's been buying quite a few cool releases and stuff. And today we're going to talk about ones that we've not bought recently.
Very old ones.
Mine's is more recent actually. But
Yeah.
we're gonna batter into it. Who wants to go first?
I could
Anyone
go first.
I'm into it.
Is it the
Nice.
album?
Right, Craig,
the album
over
I've picked.
to you.
I know very well. Very comfortable having a chat about this. So the album that I have picked, although I've been buying some new records during lockdown. I bought this. This is the actual copy that I bought when I was 14. Maybe I bought this 14 or 15. It is Alive by Kiss.
Surprise.
But I haven't done Kiss.
No,
yet.
you haven't done Kiss, and that it's just I can't get over how rock and roll that cover is.
It's so good.
Everything in it, it's ridiculous.
Do you know, but the thing I always loved about this album, on the back cover, so I should say Alive, sure it's clear, is a live album, right? So there's a good crowd shot on the back. Look at that banner.
I mean, I can't see it.
I can't see it because you're holding.
Oh, yeah, I'm
it up
pointing
to
the
your
wrong
phone,
camera.
but,
I'll show you guys.
yeah.
Oh, amazing!
Good.
Is that you?
Ah,
No,
cool.
joking.
How
That's
good
amazing.
is that?
It-
They worked
I'd give
so
the
hard
drawings.
putting
The
that
drawings
together.
are a 4 out of 10.
How live is it?
Well,
Is it one of these live
Ah.
records where they go back into the studio and like
We
re-record
shall
everything?
discuss that in due course.
I'm intrigued.
That's a
What's
good wee
nice is
subject.
Love a
there's
bit of chat with that.
we notes, handwritten notes from the band members inside the album. Show you
We posted.
gentlemen as well. It's quite cool. It's a cool album. This is so this came out in 1975, and it was the 4th Kiss album and their first live record. So as I said, it's called Kiss Alive. Actually, Jason, a wee nod to Slade. You know, the
That's
Slade
because
Alive
the
record.
Slade Alive, yes, 1 and 2.
Kiss are really big Slade fans, so they named it as a wee tribute to Slade.
I knew that
Slade
actually
Alive.
because
Nice.
Big Noddy Holder, shout out to my man, met Gene Simmons backstage at a gig one time.
Hi, Noddy.
And
Big
there's
nodders.
all right, nodders. All right, hobnob. And Gene speaks about the band and how it was one of the most like tenacious live bands he'd ever witnessed for the time and stuff like that. So it's imagine if I had picked a
they're
Slade
big
album.
fans. That was a cool wee thing. So they actually had Kiss had. I don't know where to look. If I should look at you guys, I'll look at you guys. I would split.
Go back and forth. I'm
between
doing a bit
both.
of
bit of tennis. So this was their 4th album, and the first 3 records weren't particularly successful. So it was 3 studio albums, and the albums didn't sell very well. Really mediocre response, but their gigs were always rammed. You know, the gigs always sold really well, and they had an amazing reputation for their live show, even back then as they do now. And Casablanca Records, who Kiss were signed to, they weren't doing that hot either, man. They were in a bit of financial sketch. They tried this record. I think it was something to do with like Johnny Carson, this live thing, and they really went deep on it, and it bombed out, and they lost quite a bit of money. So there was a bit of panic stations. Kiss at this point in '75, they hadn't even been paid royalties from any album sales yet. That's how bad it was, man. 3 records and no royalties. It was only the advance.
It's because they spent about £500,000 on makeup.
I mean, there was just no money in from the label, man. But so Neil Bogart was the guy who was the head of Casablanca. And it was a wee bit of a Hail Mary that he wanted to try a live record to try and capture the live experience of Kiss, because part of the problem that the band spoke about later was that they felt that on those albums they never really captured what Kiss were about. They couldn't do it in the studio, so they wanted to do it on this live record. So they done it off the back of the tour. It was the Dress to Kill tour, and they spent like $300,000 or whatever putting a tour. In fact, the label couldn't afford it, so Kiss's manager paid for it. This guy Bill Aucoin, I think you pronounce his name. So he fronted the tour, and this album is an amalgam of 4 shows from that tour. It's like New Jersey, I think Detroit might have been on one of them. But this was quite a big commercial success. It went gold. It didn't go platinum, oddly, but what it did do was to start a really big run of Kiss platinum albums. So Kiss consistently went platinum after the release of this.
Consistently.
I think it was cool, like that. It was a good move, pretty smart. You know, when you've got a band that's not selling in the studio, but they're killing it on tour. You know, that's
capturing
a
bit of that.
Yeah. So they got it across 4 shows, but there was quite a lot of overdubs. It was something that Kiss denied really early on.
I knew it.
Every live album.
Well, that's maybe a wee interjection. It would be good if we had a graphic. Segue. That a lot of people, maybe specifically some of our younger people watching this, maybe don't realise that a lot of live albums are redubbed over.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In the studio and touched up and tweaked here and there. You know, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the band are terrible. Do you know what I mean? Live, you know, it's not like. And also, what I was going to say actually is, you know, it's rare. I don't think you'd maybe get the same nowadays, but it'd be rare now for a band to have 3 albums flop and still be getting pushed, you know, and trying. I know that was the same with Aerosmith. It took them quite a few albums, like 2 or 3 albums the same, to actually break and become a sensation. Whereas I don't know if that would happen quite the same now. 3 flop albums that didn't make the studio money.
No.
It's like
difficult to keep on going when you've been told your first 2 records are, you know,
they're not selling.
Not sold.
Obviously
not sold,
amazing.
Not,
I mean, for the first track on your first ever album to be Strutter is
it's not bad.
Not the
bad
worst.
Start.
It's alright.
I think that was it, like the label in a bit of a spot. It was the same as, I mean, I guess you see these amazing things happen in difficult moments, like when, you know, I know I always talk about either Kiss or comics, right? But back in the 90s when Marvel were really, I mean, they were selling the doors, man. They were so skint, you know, and they were really trying anything. And they let Mark Miller come in and write Ultimates. They wouldn't have allowed something like that to happen if they're in a strong position, and that really. I mean, even now you still feel the effects of that comic series. You wouldn't have the Avengers film as what it is without Mark Miller. Shout out to Glasgow comic book writers, by the way. Wee Glasgow boy. Coatbridge.
Big ups.
So I think it was because the label were doing really, they were pretty grim. They'd went in on an album that didn't pan out, and they could see that Kiss was still touring and doing well. So they got it over 4 dates, and it obviously sounded really rough because Kiss, even now, I mean, in the advanced stage that they're at, their live shows still super energetic. You know, they still do a lot, man. But back in the mid 70s, you know, they were running around, all the stuff that they do now, they were doing then. You know, star jumps when they're playing guitar and stuff. So there was loads of wrong notes, missed chords. Paul and Gene had knocked microphones over. Loads of mistakes. In fact, apparently the only bit that they kept from the audio from those was Peter Criss's drum part, and everything else had to be changed.
You must have been loving that.
I know, man.
Knowing
he could
that.
just, like,
Do you know
he's
what I mean?
so wide, isn't he? Like, that would have been the beginning for him. He'd be like,
who didn't have to re-record a part.
I know. He's such a diddy as well, man. See when they get kicked out of the band, so they obviously the big fight.
He's such a what?
He's such a diddy.
Can't put that in.
P Diddy.
You know about Diddy?
I think we could put the word Diddy in, alright.
Pretty
Yeah,
sure
man.
we'll be safe with
Yeah.
Diddy. Aye.
Well, I'm editing it, so it's going to stay in.
One of the times that he was kicked out of the band, and he wasn't performing at the shows as well as the band had wanted to, and they had somehow come to an arrangement whereby Peter Criss was going to audition to be back in the band again, right? Peter Criss can't read music, but apparently he turned up to the audition, strutting in like a wee wido, and sat out his sheet music. And like Paul and Gene were like, mate, we kicked you out 3 weeks ago. We know you haven't learned to read music, and none of us can read music. What are you doing? So like Peter Criss is such a wido, man.
I just love to think Paul Stanley's like, what you doing? You've not read it.
So mental. Because he
Anyway,
really thought he was the main guy.
What's
Ali.
the album like?
Aye, overdubs. So
Yes.
Peter didn't have to do any, and they had to do loads for everyone else. Down to like re-recording whole guitar parts, re-recording entire vocals on songs, and check this, by the way, Ali, for your punt on overdubs. Not only did they re-record their parts, do you know what else they edited in?
The audience.
Crowd noises.
Crowd audio.
They done the crowd,
Amazing.
and they took like different bits from different shows and changed the pitch and all that. Obviously, still back then, Kiss was still doing fireworks. They were doing all that stuff, but they wanted bigger explosions on record. Had to blown out the mics at the gig, so they added explosions and stuff like that.
Man, it's pure Spinal Tap.
It's so good, man. Isn't it? It's just perfect. But I
can just see that the audio guy's face when they bring that up in conversations. Yeah, we're gonna re-record the audience and the fireworks, pyrotechnics, and all that.
Well, they
You're
did
like,
take the audience from real
really?
Kiss shows. It wasn't that they manufactured it. It was from Kiss gigs. We just not at that, not responding at that particular moment. But they actually done the overdubs. Electric Lady, Hendrix's studio.
Hendrix's.
Actually, I think it's
Yeah.
Hendry. If you're plural.
Omnibuy.
Jimmy's.
Aye, Jimmy's studio. It used to be a venue, that, by the way. Do you know that? It was a venue. Ladyland.
No, I did not.
It was called Generation or something like that. And B.B. King played there, Sly and the Family Stone, Big Brother and the Holding Company played there. But anyway,
Nice.
that's where they recorded. Like 3 weeks they spent in there redoing loads of stuff, man. But it sounds amazing. Like, this was the first Kiss album I actually heard. My Uncle Stephen gave it to me. He gave me, I think in like the space of 2 weeks, when I was like 11 or 12, it gave me Leonard Cohen, Nick Cave, Jeff Buckley and Kiss.
Wow,
And
what a combo.
I know, man, what a fortnight. So it was the first thing I heard. A really good start to the band. Because although it's weird, because it obviously only has material from the first 3 albums, so there's nothing new on it. But it's the way it's presented to you. You know, you get to hear that live thing, you feel what Kiss are about. Even when they brought out, Rock and Roll All Night, so they dropped that as a single. I don't even know if it charted top 100. They brought the studio version, and then when they brought a live out, they re-released the live version, and it charted, like it rocketed up. It's the same tune, you know, just the way it was presented in that kind of live environment, and it was closer to.
I actually think when you type that song into like Tidal or what other streaming services available, the live version's the top one that comes up. I think that's definitely the first version of the song I heard was live, so it must have been from that.
They definitely work better live. I mean, I like all the studio albums, and talking about those first 3, I do really like them. But a live is totally different because it's quite close to the experience. I think when Kiss speak now, Paul and Gene speak really openly about re-recording that record, having kind of denied it for all those years, and like Paul's quite honest when like, well, look, man, for the sake of authenticity, do you want to hear an album that's full of mistakes? Do you want to hear when I was running around the stage that I missed a chord or I played the wrong note just for the sake of being authentic, or do you want to keep all that cool energy stuff and hear the way it was supposed to be played?
It's all about the final product. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess, like, look, see, when we all will have records in our collection that we get soundboard mixes from gigs, especially now. Like, I mean, you know, Kiss are big on doing it. Like, you go to a Kiss gig and you can buy the CD at a festival the day after or that night. Metallica, every show you can buy from their tour online, and you hear the live recording, and it's not always amazing because it's real and it's rough, you know. And that's fine if you're buying a gig that you were there and you want to remember the experience of the show that you were at specifically. But if it's just a live album that a band puts out, you want it to sound good, man. You know, you want it to be a good record, well played and well performed, but still keeping that kind of magic of being live. So yeah, Kiss Alive. If you've never heard Kiss, not a bad place to start. I know they're not for everyone, but it's, you know, critically done pretty well, that record. You know, you'll always find it in top 500 albums, you know, Rolling Stone and all these places. They talk about the album a lot because it was pretty influential. It did influence a lot of bands, and it probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this record. Because when that about falling out with Casablanca, the label, when they were in kind of dire straits, Kiss were going to leave Casablanca, and it was like a week after this album dropped, maybe less than a week. Kiss manager had went to Casablanca and was like, "Look, man, this has been pretty grim. We're going to go somewhere else." And Neil Bogart, who owned Casablanca, wrote a check for $2 million on the spot to keep them off the strength of this album. So yeah, pretty important record, killer album, and it's pretty amazing.
Nice.
Done
I do
deal.
like Kiss. I do. I'll go.
Cool.
I worry that I'm going to really lower the tone. Not lower the tone, lower the mood. As if we could lower the tone of our chats anymore. But I think
What have you picked?
Well, it's not maybe his height. You know, the person's not known. The vocal performance, just like from a pure emotive standpoint, I think.
Chaz and Dave.
No,
There's
I'm
no way
joking.
you've picked that.
I just wanted to see how serious you would both get. I have chosen.
Oh,
Whoa,
nice.
Leonard Cohen.
I have chosen You Want It Darker by Leonard Cohen because it's an album that has a very kind of powerful story. Powerful story. I remember the first day I heard it. Not particularly old album, 2016. The last album before his passing. He has had an album since, but it was tracks that were recorded around the same time as this that never made the album. So yeah, You Want It Darker is the last album by Leonard Cohen. We do have a big, massive Leonard Cohen fan here in the staff team, specifically his earlier stuff.
Yeah,
and with Mr. Brownlee.
Big fan.
Yeah, I remember the first day I heard this. It was actually in Ali's van with Ali.
I remember it well.
And it must have just came out that day or something. And we put on You Want It Darker, the lead single from it, and I think it was like smiles all around for the rest of the trip when we were listening to it. Only kind of after the fact found out that the album, I admittedly still don't know as much as Craig, but really didn't know anything about Leonard Cohen, minus the hits and he wrote Hallelujah, and you know he had kept writing verses for it and all this kind of stuff. Jeff Buckley anyway, it's the only version people listen to in it. But I didn't really know much about Leonard Cohen, so when I heard this, we'd done a bit of digging. If you haven't heard this record, I would stick on any of the tracks. It's not a large album, 9 tracks, and the last one's a reprise, and it's instrumental. But his voice is, I don't know how to describe it other than saying deep, which is a bit of a nothing word.
All the usual
the
superlatives, gravelly and
deepest, most emotional.
It was one of the most poignant vocal performances I've heard in a long time. So I kind of dug around with the album and was like, well, what's the story behind this? Because it didn't sound like Leonard Cohen that I had knew from just other songs that he had out.
Yeah.
Definitely a very different path. And as it turns out, you know, he recorded most of the vocal takes for this, you know, in his private hospital, in bed, recording vocal takes. And it was his son that compiled it, Adam Cohen, and that compiled it, recorded all the instrumentation around it and put it to his vocals rather than the other way about. There wasn't a track and then Leonard done it. It was like it kind of worked backwards, but it was the first album I'd heard in quite a while, I'm not as blessed. I'm blessed. Maybe I'm blessed. I'm not as old as Ali and Craig, so when they talk about growing up with some of what we consider now as the most classic of albums, when I was growing up, Busted were number one, and McFly were number one, which I don't
As
feel is
opposed to,
my
like,
fault.
Two Unlimited we had. Two Unlimited.
Well, I guess
and
the
Shampoo.
argument's always there that the bands. I mean, you were about when Nirvana were starting their thing, and a lot of kind of great bands were starting. I don't feel like, maybe I just don't have my finger in the pulse, but now, or when I was growing up, I don't remember any. It's kind of like another tangent. It's another one of the logos. Tangent. His vocal performance in this album is pretty special. The album kind of all deals with death and God and angels and life in most of the tracks that he kind of talks about. So I'm just reading some of it now. Love, death, his own mortality, a big subject in the album.
Yeah.
But it was the process of it recording. It was just, I don't know if there's any other albums that have really worked like that, where, I mean, I know it's probably too far to say, but someone kind of almost on their deathbed, recording vocals and their last piece to
Bit
the world.
similar to
I think-
like Johnny Cash's
Johnny
last
Cash
piece
and
as well,
Black
He
Star as
wasn't
well,
long
maybe.
after that,
Yeah, Black
Yeah.
Star.
Aye, like a very purposeful
But listen, man, it's not like,
gift.
Yeah, and that's it. Like,
Do you know what I mean?
think we're trying to think of who's done that.
Gift.
Who needs to do that? Like, the greatest songwriters need to do that. Is that final thing? Like, and then, like, when I heard that record, I don't particularly listen to them. I find it quite difficult to listen to, because of the content and how it feels. But that album feels to me like it's less for me than it was for him.
Yeah.
As if like
It's
I
definitely
need to do this.
Yeah, it's definitely a self-reflection on how he's feeling and how he's viewed people. He's singing about love, but it's not like when I can't believe I'm bringing you two into this. When only because I know a lot about Bono and the way he
Shocker.
writes. Bono always writes
surprise.
from. All right, Kiss boy. Just had 20 minutes, I guess. Bono always sings from a point of view of someone else to loads of people, but you can tell when Leonard Cohen's singing about love and this and mortality, it's all very much personal. He's singing to someone about their personal relationship, so it's kind of like you're listening to something that someone's let you in on. Do you know what I mean? And their kind of thoughts and memoirs rather than this I relate to this, because there's not much I would say in here that I really relate to is what he's singing about. Death's not something that really enters my mind too often.
I just think with Leonard Cohen for like his whole career, man, was able to say things in a way that I've never heard anyone else. They've never been able to articulate it in the same way that he did. I suppose before he was a musician, he was a poet. So it's not by accident that his lyrics are good.
That's one of the main draws to the album. And instrumentally, it's very, very minimalist. There's not a lot going on, but a lot of the tracks, it's maybe just strings. I don't know. I don't think a lot of the track really have. I mean, that lead single has that kind of electronic drum beat throughout the whole thing, but it's all very subdued.
The choral,
Choral
vocals.
Choral.
Yeah, I like choral better.
If I didn't know
Choral vocals
that he was a
very haunting.
If I didn't know, it's super haunting. If I didn't know he was a poet by Craig Tell Me, I think it's easy to guess. I mean, it's kind of worked opposite, because this is my starting point with Leonard Cohen, so I've worked back. So I can see how you've went the other way, that it could be quite difficult to listen to this version of him. But the way he structures melody and more so phrasing and the rhythm of where certain words lie, it's pretty unique and not something I've heard from a lot of artists. I can't think of an example now. All my technology means I can't Google on because I'm using them all for something. But some of the lyrics and some of the songs, the way they lie and fall, it's just pretty.
That's because, like, I think when obviously he is a published poet as well as a singer songwriter, but he understands prosody and meter. He understands how to structure words so that if you read a poem of his, you feel the inherent rhythm that you're driven to because he's put you there, and you know, like the internally within that poem.
Yeah.
He can do that without the music. So when he has music to enhance that, it's even stronger. And like we were talking about our top 10 debut albums of all time, like a total shoe-in for me is Leonard Cohen's first record. I mean, I listened to that. There probably isn't. I mean, I'm 36 now, so for over 20 years, I'd be very surprised if a month has gone by where I haven't listened to that album at least once.
It is lyrical genius, some of the stuff on this. I really need to dive back because I mean, judging by this as his kind of last album ever, you know, he must have had an unbelievably strong musical career with his releases, unless he went mental and done drum and bass in the 90s.
Well, there was a grim period in the 80s, remember that? What was that tune? It was a video of him on the beach, and it was like the electronic drums and stuff.
Man,
like,
a lot of artists seem
man.
to have had, a lot of these like 70s, 60s artists seem to have a bit of a rough patch in the 80s. Where they're trying to like reinvent. Man, the Aretha Franklin's 80s stuff's ridiculous. It's quite good though.
That's
But
amazing.
a great line from this in the second track, Treaty. I won't go on too longer. I'll pass on to Ali. I seen you change the water into wine. I seen you change it back to water too. I sit at your table every night. I try, but I just don't get high with you. It's the way he actually sings. It's great. It's an album to go listen to, but it's definitely not what I would class as easy listening by any stretch of the imagination. You really need to purposefully want to sit down and listen to it. But that is You Want It Darker by Leonard Cohen.
Cool looking guy, isn't he?
I mean,
what a
the image
champion.
is absolutely spectacular in this. I mean,
And he's always cool, man.
yeah, he's
Always
always been pretty cool. Great album cover as well. Let's just say for the artwork,
Yeah.
pretty great artwork.
I wish you'd done that.
Unlike
Unlike Chaz, Big Chaz. That's
We
not a
should
slag
do-
to Chaz and Dave. If the one half that's still alive watches, then hit us up.
We should
like
do a
Rabbit.
Leonard Cohen special one day, man, and just do a whole episode about Leonard Cohen.
Well, I just talk about this album again. It's only what I've got.
I just
I will say his newest album that's released after this isn't as good. But I think maybe not musically based and stuff. It's pretty similar, but
I
I
never
think
listened to it.
the potency of what this album was about and the process of it was half the attraction and the appeal and the draw to it. It's you get the same with Bowie's kind of Black Star was his last effort to the world, but then tracks have released since, EPs have released since. Done it with Prince as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult thing when someone so influential passes away, and their family, they now own that estate, and some want to do it to continue to make money, I suppose, and some want to preserve the legacy of that artist, and there's a whole myriad of things in between. I can't imagine how hard it must be, and some have done it really well, like Mary Guibert, you pronounce it, Jeff Buckley's mum, fiercely protective over his music, and I always thought done it in a really amazing way.
I think so.
Phil Lynnett's family do a good job. Phil Lynnett's another one that's it has a good family controlling his music and stuff. But the Leonard Cohen one, I patched the last record because it's probably the same as you've described, Jason. Like I felt that I'd been there with that record. I didn't really want to go back to it.
Aye, that was the same feelings I had with it.
Yeah, a tough
it's pretty
one, man.
emotional.
Yeah.
Speaking of people passing and good music coming out in the 80s.
What a
Oh
segue.
well, 2 segues.
Double segue.
Has it ever been done?
Speaking of people passing and good competition for good music in the 80s,
Twice.
I have gone for New Order's release of Power, Corruption and Lies. It's
What an
Power,
album.
Corruption, Lies. It's not got
Yeah.
an and in it. This is a fantastic album. Again, talking about top 10. Well, we're talking about top 10 debut albums, but we'll be talking about top albums in the past, over the past 3 months of lockdown. This would be right up there with one of mine. Personally, for personal music tastes, it does combine all of those things that I like to hear in a record. Experimental synth sounds, crisp drum sounds, kind of not too overly distorted guitars, nice jangly guitars and cracking vocals. And I think the reason why this album is so good, well, I'll come to the artwork in a wee minute, but I think one of the reasons why this album has been so critically acclaimed is because it really was the first time I think that New Order kind of stepped out of the shadow of Joy Division, really. And I think the previous albums, there was maybe too much Joy Division in there, with maybe like Joy Division music with
without Ian Curtis.
Without Ian Curtis, but you know, now I think with this was them as a full package. It was New Order lyrics, New Order vocals, with a slightly different feel to it.
I actually don't know them that well outside of that album. Like I don't even know how. Like I wouldn't even have thought about that as a marked point in their career. It's really just that record and a few tracks that I really love. I've never really looked back at their, like, I love Joy Division, and then I'm kind of off the bus until this album, I think. I might go back though and go through it, because that's actually a good point. It'd be interesting to listen with that in mind.
Yeah, and I think it's this vinyl doesn't have Blue Monday on it. I think Blue Monday was included in some of the CD and cassette versions.
Oh, was it really?
Of the album. But the really funny thing is that there's a couple of tracks in this. They've not got it written on here. The Village and is it 586? Both of those tracks kind of give you a sense of what's to come for Blue Monday, which I really like about that. Actually, my favourite track in it is the opening track, because I think it's got
Age of Consent,
which I think it's just got a really nice, summery, happy vibe to it.
Hi guys, my video cut out during recording, so sorry about that. What we're going to do is, because obviously we are pretty much wizards with video editing and whatnot, special effects, put me back in. You probably won't even notice that it happened, but I thought it's better to be honest anyway. But yeah, sorry about that. Hope you enjoy the chat. Bye.
I like it. It's my favourite one. The artwork is worth discussing with this one.
It's brilliant.
The photograph came from a postcard that the artist had seen whilst out. I think they were really struggling to find what to put on the album cover, and the artist who was commissioned for putting the artwork together, I think he'd bought it for his partner or whatever, and did some investigative work into who owned the painting, and I think he phoned up the National Heritage Trust?
I don't know,
something along those. I can't remember. And they said that they didn't know who the artist was, but it was owned by the trust. I think when they got a knockback for using it, the record label owner phoned them back up again and said, look, who actually owns it? And they said, well, it belongs to the trust, and the trust belongs to the people. And he said something along the lines of, well, the people want this, something like this. The people say they want this, and he said, well, I can't really argue against that, so they gave them the rights to use the cover.
I never knew that, man. That's amazing.
I think the artist, the designer, thought that the flowers represented the title quite well. You know, power, corruption, lies. You can read in quite a lot of that to the artwork, which I quite like. And then flip side was all about the floppy disk.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think when Blue Monday came out, I know it's not on this record, but when Blue Monday came out, I think it's common knowledge that the actual manufacture of the vinyl was more expensive than what they made. I think they lost.
They did, aye.
50p
it was something ridiculous.
Every sale, or something like that.
I was like, when they
lost.
When they got it, it was Tony Wilson. What was the other guy called? Tony Wilson and someone else that owned Factory. But Tony Wilson was the main guy anyway. And when they were putting it together, and they were like, man, it's going to cost more to manufacture the single than it will to sell it. You know, we're not going to make that much money. And Tony Wilson was like, don't worry, man, we're not really going to sell that many anyway. Then obviously they sold through the roof, man, and lost a fortune.
I think they lost £50,000 putting that one single out.
I think like
a
New Order
move.
was skint. Like those dudes in that band, like think how many records are sold, how big they are. Didn't make a lot of money, like. But I think that's the thing about Factory, like such a crazy record label, man. You know, like
I wonder how skint they actually were, because I've watched a few interviews. I saw one interview with Peter Hook, and he said that the only reason they were able to buy all the latest synthesizers and new technology that was out and about at that time was because they had enough money from Joy Division. You know, they were saying that like a lot of the bands that had all the top end gear for recording these albums at that time, they were all quite middle class from wealthy backgrounds. You know, where their parents were able to invest money, or they you know, that combined with a decent record deal, they were able to spend a lot of money in equipment. But he says that they spent an absolute fortune on the latest synthesizers and equipment to make that album. So well, they certainly put it to good use, because the album sounds amazing. Still sounds very fresh today.
Yeah, it does, man,
as well.
sure.
It's not got a dated sound to it at all. 1983 this came out. I was uno.
I was zero.
Jason was minus something.
And I was.
I never really got into New Order until sort of my mid-20s, though. You know, they weren't really on my radar. My brother, unfortunately, was into things like John Bon Jovi.
No, with Bon Jovi.
Def Leppard and stuff like that, but I'm not really into that.
They're amazing as well. I love Def Leppard.
I
was late to New Order as well, to be fair.
It's nice. It's nice to have a chance to re-listen to these albums. What else can I say about this record? Yeah, I think I've said most
it
of the
made
stuff.
Rolling Stone's top 100 albums of the 1980s.
Oh, it was awarded a Grammy. Yeah, it was album of the year.
Oh, yeah, backtrack.
No, it wasn't.
So was
it?
This
Was
got
it a Grammy?
Why you have a think about it?
I did Google that.
This
Pretty
got
sure
a Grammy. I can't remember what it won. I think it actually won Best Rock Album. Believe it or not, like the year after it was released.
I
You
think
can always edit that in.
Like that New Order record. Do you know, sometimes, like, I think we do it more because we actually do listen to records a lot, where you know you physically go and put an album on and not just listen to Spotify or any kind of digital streaming. But that New Order record is one that you want to listen to the whole thing. Like the whole album is one. Hit my mic twice, by the way.
Yeah.
It's one entire thing, and that's pretty rare. To have
I
that.
forgot. So the artwork, going back to the artwork, the color code. So they decided not to put the name of the band or the name of the album on it, and they instead used a color code system. And you had to work it out. You had to work out what it said. Now, I'm pretty sure I figured this out ages ago, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But I know that that's the record label.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Fat. Is it Fat? What was the record?
It's Factory.
Factory. Fat. Whatever the number was. So that was FAT. And then from that, you could figure out how the alphabet corresponded with the colours in the code.
That's
And then-
intense,
Cool.
man.
You
That
worked
is.
out. You had to work out which colour was a letter and a number.
Arguably easier just to put the name on it in the first place, but you know.
Put the name on it. Oh,
I'm
wonder
getting
how many
stressed out
people-
even think about that.
I know,
Yeah, and
I can't even fathom it. I wonder how many people worked that out when it came out. Do you know what I mean? I wonder how long before forums existed.
And
Did people
they used the
actually
same.
work out?
They used the same way to display it on the next album, on the Blue Monday release, and on the next album as well.
Oh, that's cool, man. I didn't know that. That's a big thing for Factory when you think about I always think, like, Factory's a real visual thing for me, that label. You think about the artwork and I don't know, just how they're presented, and even you think about that, like the Hacienda posters and the graphics, like I think they were so clever, man. Like, I know a lot of folk aren't into Tony Wilson, but he really was pretty smart guy, man. And I do love that. There's a real identity about that label and the bands that belong to it, man. A Certain Ratio. Remember them? Is that what they were called? A Certain Ratio? Yeah. But I like that. I didn't know that. I'm going to go and look at that colour code.
The
That's
colour
cool.
code.
That's-
You
that is
can
interesting.
Google it now. It tells you how to figure it out. But it's a system. I can't remember how it went.
That's clever, isn't it?
It's not A B C D. It's something else.
That'd be too easy, really, wouldn't it?
It would be too easy. Yeah.
It's just the alphabet.
Anyway, you go and check that out. Go and figure out the coding system.
Well, whoa, wasn't that a journey? 3.
Oh, wait, I thought I had something cool to
albums.
say.
Oh, go on.
Cool to say. Did you hear about Leonard Cohen's wee brother? Know what his name is? Ice Cream.
What a
You've
way
been
to
sit-
sign off.
You've been sitting. What a way to sign off. I
The
know.
good
That
thing
it,
is,
isn't it?
nobody's watching at this moment in time.
Do you want to hear? I told Ben this not that long ago, and he loves it. You know how that guy Shawn Mendes?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what his brother's called? Trey Mendes. It's good, isn't it?
So
Anyway.
hopefully you enjoyed any of those 3 albums. And yeah, please let us know if you've got anything. Have you added to your collection over lockdown? Have you started a
Aye.
collection over lockdown? Have you upgraded your gear? I know one of my friends has just recently done an overhaul to our gear and our record player and speakers and all that. So what have you done music? Have you listened to any new bands? Have you made some music? Let us know down below in the comments, alright?
That'd be good.
And we'll catch you in the next one. I thought we were waving.
Well, my video just cut.